Hello, I'm Menka Shivdasani, a writer from Mumbai. I'm going to read a few poems from my book Phrasal, which is a collection of poems written between 1980 and 2017. I was about 16 when some of these poems were written, and some of the poems are more recent, of course. So I'll begin with a poem that I wrote when I was 16 called Crystal. For all its glitter, diamond is only carbon. Never mind differences in price, quality, prestige. Carbon, they said, was black, ugly. So they changed the refractive index, used it as lead to shoot graphitic holes in paper mass. Then realized it could be polished to still greater purposes and made what we call a diamond. The softness gradually became hard. Today, only another diamond can cut me. Another poem from that same period is called Hinges, and it goes like this. I found my body hinged like any other door. It could open and close with just a push. It had been pushed too often. One hinge was insecure, the other firm as iron. No tool seemed to work when I tried unhinging myself, and carpenters charged exorbitant rates. So I decided to leave it where it was. Now I'm building another body for myself. And here's a fairly recent poem called Iron Woman. There are two versions of this. There is a longer version online that somebody else put up, and there's a shorter version that I used in Frizzle. I'll read the shorter version. Iron Woman. Woman of iron from an exploded star, I embed myself in a crusty earth that waits for the sun to rise. Hammer me into sheets, stretch me into wires. I will turn into a plough or light up the world in return. Freed from the meteorite with lightning tongue, I expand without breaking. You may melt me and mix me. I emerge even purer, magnetic and ready to strike. Iron woman in her element. This one is a slightly longer poem called Bird Woman, and it goes like this. On one of those days when the key refused to fit the padlock, I turned myself to air and squeezed through the keyhole. It was bright outside, and I was tired of all those jostling women. Nomad with her fraying suitcase, devil woman with her lacerated tail, and that sad little lady with her stained and grimy apron, who seemed so familiar, disintegrating in 1,000 homes. All these women and a few more were crowding in, and the keyhole that sat on my shoulder was at cracking point. I knew I had somehow lost my way in the brightness outside after all those years in a dingy room. Stretching my legs was a strain, and breathing was a whole new experience. But folded up behind my back, I found some wings. They were slightly dirty, but once I got used to their rusty screech, I found, strangely enough, they worked. I'm making friends with the birds now and have discovered my talons too, which sink perfectly into the eagle with his beady eyes. Breathing is still a problem sometimes, but the air is warm, and I have left those jostling women behind. There is a more recent poem I wrote called Kites. And since we're talking about flight, here it is. Kites. Kites are flimsy, fragile, decorative, paper thin, bearing their wooden cross, biding their time in airless drawers hidden away from the sky. Kites are nasty, like women. Sharp edged, they fly against the clouds, bite into your hand. The threads they bear have hidden shards of glass, unfurling as they gauge the weft of wind. You who stand on the parapet edge, believing you hold the strings, look up where it hovers and rustles. Kites are nasty. They soar. They tug against the reins, catch the nearest squall, and disappear. You will only be left with a stinging hand and an empty space above. I'll move on to one of my personal favorites. It is a poem called Tea Party. It is about a woman's journey into freedom, how difficult it can be, and yet how necessary. It goes like this. Tea Party. When you and I were about to break, there was no question of a fight over who would take the cups and who the saucers. You spilled over with steam, meniscus rippling with the slightest touch. I, supine on the floor, licked the milk once meant for you. Both of us were China at that point. One of us had been to China too, known the meaning of porcelain freedoms, sniffed red guards. One of us had known the sound of an alien tongue, harsh and guttural as it came from smiling mouths. Our smiles were circular, yours and mine. Yours from the top of the tea and mine below, two halves joined together on separate rims. When we blew at each other, the crockery stayed firm. Who but you and I would know the liquid moved? No, there was no fight over chipped white glass. The pieces lay upon the kitchen floor, and I've moved to tea parties in other living rooms, balancing alien porcelain from a frigid palm. I'll move on to my version of a love poem. It became one of the signature poems from my first book. It's called Spring Cleaning. Spring Cleaning. That was your skull on the bottom shelf, staring socketless at my ankle. It was a surprise find among those bunches of old clothes. Once I would have screamed. Now I've learned to discard what doesn't fit, and especially all that's ugly. Carelessly draped on a hanger, I found an arm leaning bonily towards the perfumes. In another corner, a dislocated knee. Did you run away so fast you broke your leg? I wish you'd wipe that foolish, toothless grin off your stupid face. You needn't be embarrassed about letting me down. Other men have too, and they didn't disintegrate like you. What the hell does one do with human remains? Should I put them in the wastebasket and let the sweeper see? Or struggling under the weight, dump a gunny bag off the beach? You really are a nuisance, turning up on a lethargic Sunday. Now go away. When I want to say hello, I'd rather walk up to the graveyard with a sweet smelling bunch of flowers, look sad, and pretend you are still below the earth. Thank you so much. Bye.